Hello and welcome to the Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike DeLuke, and it's my mission to help you lead a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life, both personally and professionally. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Doc Podcast. As we start this new year, it is often a time that we reflect on the year that has passed, as well as start to plan for the upcoming year. Many of us might make resolutions or set new goals. We may have some ideas of things we want to do. I encourage you to write those goals down. I've spoken about this a little bit before, but it is so important that you write your goals down and revisit them throughout the year. Many of our goals may be on the financial side of things. Maybe you had a really good year last year, but your taxes were higher than you wanted, so you're looking for tax saving strategies. Maybe you didn't have as good of a year last year and you're looking for ways to generate additional revenue for your business. Maybe your investing is pretty one-dimensional and you're just using the traditional vehicles of qualified plans and retirement plans and are looking for ways to develop other income streams. Maybe you're struggling managing educational, business, and or personal debt and have some goals for ways to try to reduce it. But you're just not sure how to do it and how aggressive to get in that debt reduction. I'm a big believer that setting goals and charting a path is the key to financial success and ultimately reaching financial freedom, which is where you have enough money coming in passively to support your lifestyle. It's a goal we all want to get to. And today I'm going to talk with my guest, Joey Muré, about how to do just that. Joey is co-founder and partner at Wealth Without Wall Street, dedicated to helping individuals achieve financial independence through passive income strategies. After over a decade of success in the mortgage industry, Joey shifted his focus to empowering others to break free from traditional financial systems and build lasting wealth. He's a fellow podcaster and co-hosts the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. And he's also co-author of Wealth Without Wall Street, 3 Steps to Freedom Through Passive Income. Joey's a devoted husband and father of 5 young girls, and he's passionate about helping others align their financial goals with their values, creating legacies of purpose and abundance. Some of the topics that we are going to discuss during today's show include why achieving financial freedom can seem so elusive and steps you can take to achieve it, some of the biggest mistakes people make with money, or as Joey refers to them, money traps, which take you away from your goal of achieving financial freedom, whether or not we should try to pay down debt as quickly as possible and the pros and cons of doing that, the pitfalls of the traditional Wall Street approach to wealth accumulation. As I mentioned initially, the importance of financial goal setting and some tips and strategies on how to do it, how to create a shared financial vision with your significant other, and much, much more. Before we begin, I do want to add that the content and advice offered during today's episode is for informational purposes only and is not intended to serve as financial or legal advice. For advice relative to your specific financial situation, please consult with your own tax and legal professionals. I hope everybody has a great, happy, healthy, and prosperous 2026. Thank you so much for continuing to support the show, and I look forward to bringing you great content throughout this upcoming year. Without further ado, let's get on to today's episode with Joey Muré. Enjoy the show, everybody, and have a great year. Welcome to Doc Podcast, Joey.
Glad to be here, Mike. This is going to be awesome.
Looking forward to it. As my audience knows, I tend to mix in some financial, personal well-being content into my show. But you're a fellow podcaster. You're certainly into the educational side as well as the informational side. So if you could just share a little bit about yourself and what got you to this point in your life and career.
Well, man, I'll tell you, I'm passionate about helping people understand their path to financial freedom because I think you and I would agree, like, nobody really stops and teaches us that, no matter what your pedigree, no matter what your, education, especially. I mean, you would think the more education that you've received, whether it be in the professional category, being a doctor, a lawyer, or other things, they never talk about personal finance.
Nope.
And for me, it was the same way. I wasn't to that degree that you are, but I was in the mortgage business, and for a long time, I was just constantly climbing the corporate ladder thinking, man, more active income, as my income increases, that's going to produce freedom. That's going to produce financial success. In my mind, I'm just being like transparent. That's how I was thinking. And here I was in my late 20s, making over $300,000 a year. And for like, by anybody's kind of perspective, it was way more than I anticipated being able to make. But I looked up and I'm like, this is not freedom. Like, this doesn't feel like financial success. I don't have a lot to quote unquote show for it. And most kind of tenuously, what I figured out was, man, my time was not my own. I was the only asset at work. And so I felt this insatiable requirement to keep my foot on the gas pedal.
Yes.
And if I ever took it off, the whole thing would crumble.
Yep.
Right. And so something clicked with me. I was on vacation. I share this story because it's really like burned into my psyche a little bit here. But I'm on vacation with my 5 daughters. Yes, you can pray for me after the show. And I'm telling them for the 10th time, hey, you guys go on down to the beach. I'll be right there. I have one more phone call. And what do you think happened?
It didn't end up with one phone call.
It happened every time. 4 hours later, I'm walking down the little boardwalk behind our beach house or the condo, and there they are. They start walking back up the same boardwalk. And I mean, you can just imagine like what's on their face. It's disappointment.
Yeah.
It's discouragement. It's like,
and this probably wasn't the first time that Dad had to do that, right?
No, this is multiple times. Yeah. And I see it on their face. They're saying, Dad, you're physically present, but you're emotionally miles away.
Yeah.
Like you are, and you can't even like be here with us. And again, it was about not having money at work. It was about having me at work. And so I really decided, like, there's got to be something I'm missing here. There's got to be something that is off.
About how long ago was this, Joey?
This was at least, almost 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So, and that started me on this journey to say, okay, let's see what else is out there. The common path is not working. There's got to be an uncommon path. And we can dive into what that looks like. But that's led us to today, Russ and I, my business partner, we actually report this every month. So I'm not bragging, but we've produced over $50,000 a month in passive income that has then created freedom for us.
Yep.
And so I'd love to dive into that more, but you just need to know how it started, how it's going, and then we can kind of go from there.
I appreciate you painting that backdrop and writing that story. And so many people listening, I know what you just said resonates with. I was one of them. I had moments where I was so busy in my practice and we would be traveling with the family or even just on a weekend or at a sports game, right? And you're constantly consumed by work and being physically present, but emotionally absent. And we all want to be emotionally present. It just work pulls us there's such a strong polarization almost between both of those forces. And they are very hard to make coexist. Even if you're not one more call in, say, the orthodontic arena or dental or even medical arena, if you're not on call at that time, it can just be the stress and the burden of what you did all day taking you away from being present in the evening, right? At night, at the dinner table, whatever it is. So I appreciate you explaining that because I do think that's at the crux. I feel like there is this challenge that we face between, and a lot of people listen to the show are higher earners and they understand what it's like to have worked hard to get to a point where they have good incomes coming in. And then it gets to this crossroads where you think, I have this conversation with people all the time. How much do I need? How much do I make? How much do I save? How long do I have to work? How long do I want to work? We tend to work so hard while our families are young. And then when our families get to the point where my girls are at now, where they're getting to, one's in college and one's almost to college, where you're like, whoa, okay, I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands when I don't have kids in the house. And that tends to be the point at which we're looking to almost slow down a little bit from our careers, but it's too late. So again, before we get into the X's and O's of it, if you could just from a conceptual standpoint, talk to those issues, the psychological side of this, the psychological side of money, right? Morgan Housel, that I love that book. And just speaking to the psychology of finances and balancing money with family and your other values.
Yeah. I think of this very simply. It wasn't simple to begin with because, and I think, our company's called Wealth Without Wall Street for a reason. Wall Street is not just the places where we've been told to invest. Mm-hmm. It's also a mindset that leads you to believe that your goal is to accumulate dollars, mm-hmm. right? For a someday, mm-hmm. for a one day, I will be able to stop work because I've accumulated this mountain of cash. Mm-hmm. And even though I don't know all of the variables that could affect that, hopefully there's enough dollars I can start peeling off of the top of that, mm-hmm. that I don't run out before my days run out.
Yeah.
And I'm just willing to tell you that is complex to keep you dependent on the system mm-hmm. that everybody else is getting rich off of.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm just going to tell you, it flies in the face of the way we think about money. So from psychological standpoint, you got to quit thinking about retirement. And you have to start thinking about, how do I create freedom today? Mm-hmm. And that is going to require you to do things differently with money than you've ever done before.
And you mean freedom both financially and with your time, freedom of choice?
Yeah. Well, financial freedom will lead to all the time that you want.
Okay.
So think about it for a second. If I have more passive income than I have monthly expenses, mm-hmm. all of a sudden, like I'll just sit here, I'll pull up my phone right now, I'll pull up your calendar, you start seeing the color-coded boxes mm-hmm. on your app. Mm-hmm. When you know that you're financially free, you got to put those boxes on your calendar. Mm-hmm. Someone else didn't dictate what was put on your calendar. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that for a second. On the calendar, you're putting in a point on there. It tells you who you're going to be with, mm-hmm. where you're going to be, and how long you're going to be there. Mm-hmm. And you get to choose that. Your practice did not require that of you. Mm-hmm. Your business did not require that of you. Your job, if you work a W-2 or something like that, nobody else dictated to you. That is what is possible through passive income greater than monthly expenses. Then you're getting to do things you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what I love about getting to know you before this podcast, is I can tell you're passionate about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Does it mean that you're sitting there on the beach sipping Mai Tais because you're financially free? No. You're actually getting to really be present in the things that you're passionate about. That includes family time, but it's not 100% of your time, mm-hmm. right?
True.
You're actually getting to give back. You're actually to have an impact. And that's what gets me fired up. But it's not possible if you depend on retirement. Mm-hmm. The idea of retirement, the psychology of retirement, you have to shift the gears and say, how can I become an investor who knows how to create cash flow today so that my monthly expenses are covered? Then I'm totally free.
Yeah.
Like, that is a massive mindset shift, but I'm passionate about helping people to see that, because once they get that, dude, it changes everything.
Everything. Yeah, I completely agree. And I appreciate the kind words on that, because, and it's so true. My wife just said, literally within the past 2 hours before we recorded this, we were talking about a big article I'm working on that I'm trying to get published. I have many co-authors, and it's really going to hopefully be a landmark piece to raise awareness to the issues with mouth breathing and airway. And I really am trying to create this seminal document. And she said, if you were still seeing patients, you would never have been able to devote the time and energy you've had to devote to writing and coordinating this article. I mean, there's physicians and orthodontists and general practitioners and pediatric dentists and oral myofunctional therapists in my co-author group. It's a significant undertaking from a time and energy and resource perspective. And I'm really enjoying it. And like you said, I'm choosing to do it. I'm doing it because I see the need for this and the need to further that education. And there's a total difference in that than when I was in my practice and I had patients booked out for 4 to 5 months, literally, and I had that pressure over. And I love my clinical practice, and I'm actually going to be re-engaging in some clinical practice a little bit down in Florida and in some other ways, but I love having my hands in it. I still love the art and the craft of what I did. It's so different, though, when I can now devote my time and my energy to my passion for changing the way our profession views approaching care, especially as it relates to airway, versus just going in and trying to do the best I could do with the limited amount of time I had in a day, which was never enough. And the switch was, and I want you to talk a little bit about the passive income side too, to kind of help people understand what that is. Once I developed other ways, so I guess I'll back up a second. The key for me was being able to, and it took my wife and I, it was both of us. We shared a mentality. We can talk a little bit about Rich Dad Poor Dad in a bit, but we had read that book early on, and she read Smart Couples Finish Rich. This is in the early 2000s, almost 25 years ago. And we read those books and didn't know the impact they would have on our lives. But what it did was it set us on a course to be able to not spend every dollar we made, to not want to be what Kiyosaki calls, or Rich Dad calls, the rat race, right? Which is what you were essentially describing, which is where your calendar is full of things that you don't put there, that are put there by someone else for you to do. And you have to do them, because if you don't, you lose your your source of income and revenue, and you can't pay to fulfill your lifestyle. Switching that to the mentality of, I don't want to be that way forever. And I acknowledge most people are going to have to be that way at some point. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too. Like, you have to at some point generate some sort of revenue to invest with, or unless you come from wealth. But if you don't, you have to kind of put in the grind and go through it. What I feel like happens to most people, what I'm very fortunate and blessed didn't happen to me, was that they start generating that revenue. They spend it, and then they have to keep earning it to keep up with their spending. And they just keep thinking, I'll do one more procedure. I'll do one more patient. I'll work one extra month. I'll work one extra year. And then what they do they're putting all into the Wall Street type investments. And I feel like that's a bit of a trap we fall in. So I know that was a lot I threw at you. So kind of, you could break down like that mentality side of things, as well as what passive income really is, and how people can even start in those earlier years, start developing it when they may not feel like they have a lot of money beyond their expenses.
Yeah, so I'll address that first. Mm-hmm. Number one, you have to have active income before you can have passive income. Yep. But you have to have a true process to start changing from one to the other.
Okay.
If you don't, that is the epitome of the rat race.
Yep.
The active income to spending. If nothing gets out of that regular economy, if the dollars don't get out of that economy and into your actual wealth plan, like that place where you can start producing passive income, mm-hmm. with the excess and the surplus, mm-hmm. then you're stuck. And that's why people feel stuck, because they're like, man, kind of spend everything that I make, everything else I put into these money traps, which we can dive into what we believe are money traps. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you have to have active income, you have to have surplus in order to then get out and create passive income. Mm-hmm. Now, to your point about the question of passive income, I'll go ahead and just like handle the immediate objection. People are like, is it really passive, Joey? Like, is passive income really passive? And what I always answer that is, passive income is not uninvolved income. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is you have to actually be an investor. And I would even use a biblical term to kind of drive the point home. Mm-hmm. I believe we're called to be stewards of things that God's given us. Mm-hmm. That includes our time, that includes our energy, our bodies, mm-hmm. like money. All these things are things that we're given that I believe we now have to steward. Mm-hmm. Well, a steward is somebody who is actively pursuing the best possible use of those resources. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. They're constantly learning. They're constantly asking questions. They're being curious. They're actually doing due diligence. They're actually building relationships. Like, all those things are important to becoming an investor. Mm-hmm. If you're not willing to do those things, then you're really abdicating that to somebody else.
Yes.
You're saying, I know I've been given this money, but I'm just going to hand it off to somebody else and hope that in 30 years, it all works out.
Mm-hmm. So you're differentiating that from one from the other, one being investing. It's kind of actively investing to generate passive income, meaning not just passing those dollars off to someone else, a financial advisor, and saying, here, put them in the market and we'll hope it's there later. So you have to have some sort of active involvement initially to hopefully then get that passivity versus just completely passing, it's kind of an irony here, completely passing it to someone else, right? Being very passive with how you invest your dollars, but requiring you to then be active and generate income for many years in the future. Am I thinking of that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. And what I would say, once you become an investor who can actually look at deals and be able to tell the difference between one and the other and how they actually are going to, the business plan that they're operating under, you can still hand those dollars over to the right operators. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not saying that you have to do everything yourself, because that would be the opposite of actually investing. That's actually doing it yourself. But there are regular, check-ins that are necessary to be a good steward. Like, you don't just hand over dollars and then look up in 5 years and say, what the heck happened?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out because not everybody was kind of just doing their own thing. But I'll give you some examples.
Yep.
Russ and I invest in a lot of business type opportunities. One is a land investing business. Mm-hmm. Well, we're 70% partners and there's a 30% operating partnership. Mm-hmm. Well, they do 99% of everything that needs to be done to make this a profitable business. Mm-hmm. It's over $36,000 a month right now in note income coming to the company. But what do? We go in and we check every month. We see what's the progress. We check in with them and say, hey, if we had additional capital, what would we do with it? And they start throwing out ideas. And we say, hey, let's look into this one. And we're advising, we're actually connected to the process, but we're not actually doing the day-to-day operations of that business. That is an involved passive income, as I'm trying to explain. The same would be true if you owned a commercial property or you owned a residential property. You may have active property management for those properties, but if you don't ever go visit them, or you don't ever go check in with them, or have regular cadence of, hey, let's talk through the P&L of this. What's going on right now? Oh, wait a minute. It looks like you've got this extra expense. Could we cut that for the next quarter and let's see how that works out? That still requires your involvement, but not necessarily all of your time to dig in on the day-to-day, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely it does. And I found too, and I'm glad you brought that point up, because I have found when people hear about passive income, they think of a duplex, right? That they have to be there renovating and maintaining, and landlord to tenants, and call, again, Rich Dad talks about, or Kawasaki talks about this, you'll get the call at 1 a.m. for the broken toilet. I mean, if that's your thing and you want to own a bunch of duplexes or apartment complexes for passive income, you certainly could generate passive income that way. It's not that you can't. It doesn't have to be that. I have some passive income investments that I literally just collect the monthly checks from. I did the due diligence with my advisory team in the beginning to vet them and make sure that they were sound investments. Once we invested those dollars, some were in 1031 exchanges, some were in manufactured housing that have other benefits and credits associated with them. And we can get into the tax advantages of doing a lot of this. You then literally can create streams of passive income. I have land investments as well, where same thing, you invest certain dollars, and when they develop the land, David Valley, who was on my show a while back, he talked about that and how his group does a lot of that, where they'll find big projects and then they'll do all the development. They handle all that. I'm not going to the town board meetings trying to get it zoned the right way. I just help put up the capital to purchase the property. They're doing all that. And then I get a cut of the revenue when they sell it for more. So there's all sorts of different opportunities out there, and you can get into some of these for a pretty reasonable amount. So if you'd speak to that for a minute, because I think a lot of people hear this and they're like, yeah, Mike and Joey, right? Sounds great. But, I'm already too far down that hole, or let's face it. I know people, I had someone come up to me. I gave a lecture a couple of weeks ago, a presentation, and someone came up to me after, an orthodontic resident, and said by the end of school, there'll be 1.2 million in student loan debt. And they hear that and they say, I got to undig. So what is your advice to some of the people, both at that stage and at the stage where they're far into the game, right? They've been doing it the traditional way for a long time. We can start with the earlier, the younger, and then go to the older. How do you give advice to those people who like what you're saying and like that thought, but feel kind of trapped because of their circumstances?
Well, man, we actually did a lot of work early on with like the dental schools here in Birmingham.
Oh, cool.
Because those students were in the same boat. They had all this like technical knowledge of the dental industry and the work that they were going to do.
Yep.
But they had no business acumen. They had no financial acumen. So they would bring people like our group in to teach these things. And so I'm right there with you. The number one question we always were dealing with is, what about debt?
Yeah.
Hey, we're in debt. How about that? What do we need to do? And there's a couple of things about it. One, debt is super emotional. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of one of those things where I can tell you objectively what to do with debt, mm-hmm. but emotionally, if it is that big of a weight to you that you don't feel like you can breathe, it doesn't matter what I say, you're going to just try to pay it off as fast as possible. Yeah. But for those who really do want to get to freedom as fast as possible, not just debt freedom, but financial freedom, and there's a difference, we can discern the two. Mm-hmm. But the big thing is, if you go back to the same financial formula, when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, you're financially free. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just break this down for a second. It's not uncommon for a dental student, orthodontic student, to come out of school with well over, $300,000 to $500,000 in debt. Right. And you think, oh my goodness, what a huge number. But you also have to remember that many of those come with pretty reasonable repayment terms, mm-hmm. meaning low interest rates or long terms that they can pay over a long period of time. And so the actual monthly expense, remember, that's the thing we're tracking, mm-hmm. is significantly lower as opposed to somebody who has like a $500,000 personal loan. Mm-hmm. Right. Those terms are way worse. They're trying to get paid over a shorter period of time, higher interest. So you think about it in terms of it, and I'll give you an example. One of these dental students had come and worked with us, and as he was going through our process, he was like, he kind of got sick, like going through the different cash flow analysis things that we do. Mm-hmm. And he said, I just paid off $400,000 in student loans. Finally, this is 10 years into my practice, mm-hmm. which, for all intents and purposes, that sounds pretty good, mm-hmm. right? You're like, man, 10 years, that's pretty aggressive. He worked hard, but he said, now knowing what I know, I totally wish I would have stopped paying extra on those student loans, mm-hmm. just paid the minimum, mm-hmm. taken that $400,000, and he did the math. If I started using that $400,000 to buy a rental property, this is just a traditional rental mm-hmm. property. This is nothing special, and we have way more opportunities that are better than this. If I just bought those little rental properties along the way, I would have had way more cash flow to cover my monthly expenses. I would have been financially free by now, mm-hmm. and I could have used the dollars to just repay the student loans from the real estate. Right. And he's like, but now I've paid off all the debt and I have no cash and no passive income. Yeah. Think about that.
And lost 10 years of time.
And 10 years.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is radical, guys. Like, as I'm talking this out, you're probably like, wait a minute. I've just been told all I can do is pay off my debt and retire one day in the 30, 40 years from now. Mm-hmm. This is the actual place to freedom, is start taking all that extra cash and creating cash flow so that you can cover your monthly expenses. What is in your monthly expenses includes debt payments and includes living expenses. Because think about it. You can pay off all those student loans, which that doctor did. And what did he have left? He still had to eat every month. He still had to buy gas for his vehicles. He still had insurance. He still had to pay utilities. Like, all of these things were still required of him to be paid every single month. And so when was he ever going to be free? The only time he was going to be free is when he started stacking up passive income, not just paying off debt. Because here's a quote, and you can write this down. You can never pay off the cost of living.
Love it.
Right? You can't pay it off. So you have to cover it with a cash flow. And so that's my focus for you is like, let me ask you a question. You've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Did you ever play his game Cash Flow?
Oh, of course. It's funny. We were just talking with my daughter. We're going to have to play it together as a family because we haven't had, our girls have read the book, but they haven't played together yet. And they actually prompted it. They were like, we want to play one time. And I mean, absolutely. Yeah. It's so great. Yeah. Yep.
So you think about that game. When have you ever played that game when someone made it out of the rat race? And if you had never played the game, that's the whole goal. You're trying to get out of the rat race. Yep. When have you ever played the game when someone paid off debt and got there?
No, it's true. Divorce and paying off debt are the two things that will keep you out of the financial freedom part of the game. Yep.
Yeah. So the only way to get there is to create passive income. So you're forced to become an investor. That's the whole point I'm making.
Yeah, it's so true. And that as you said early on in our discussion, it's a psychology. It's a shift in psychology. It's a change in your mentality, right? We are so literal a lot of times in the professions, and we work hard, and we've been able to succeed to get to the pinnacle and the peak respectively within our fields, and we've achieved. And when we've studied for tests, our mentality is study hard for something, learn something, do well on it, regurgitate it. And we like those processes. We like that safety. And so for us, it's like, okay, get out, work hard, save your money, put it into investments, traditional type Wall Street investments, and watch that number grow over time. Okay, fine. And I don't think you or I'm not saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that there's no place for any type of paper asset, so to speak, in the stock market. Some people might want to have some sort of investment in certain companies or funds or whatever the case might be. There are also tax advantages to doing that. And when you have your CPA, and I said at the beginning of this in the lead in that none of this is financial or personal or accounting or tax advice for people, just speaking generally as people who have experienced this. Yeah, you can have certain tax advantages, and you can use it as incentives for your team members too, to have bonus structures centered around 401k profit sharing plans. I think what you're trying to get at is if you go all in with all your margin, and hopefully you have some margin. That's another challenge, right? You have to have some margin meaning the difference between what you make and what you spend. Hopefully you have some margin there. I feel like most people, because we are so structured, because we are so rigid, and because we don't think we have the time, and maybe don't have the time, although I was pretty busy and I found the time to look for other alternative sources of investment to generate passive income. And we can talk more about that. And I'm happy to open up personally on that as well. The time that takes that you spend in these alternative vehicles versus just that money coming out of your paycheck or your business operating fund, right, and going right into those other traditional Wall Street investment vehicles. We tend to like the traditional when it feels safe, right? It feels predictable. It feels comfortable. It's what we were always told to do. It's what, we hear the power of compounding interest. I don't think either of us will deny that there's power in compounding interest. No matter what, when you compound money, it's going to have a powerful effect. That being said, if you just do that, how much do you set aside? And how does that do what you just said, cover the costs of living, especially pre-traditional retirement years, right? 65, call it. Let's just use it as a round number. I was able to retire from my practice at 45, 46, and be financially free and be able to do what I want with the rest of my career, literally what I want to do and I'm passionate about, because I made appropriate investments in alternative passive income vehicles while I was in my peak earning years. Had I not done that, Joey, there's no way. I mean, there's just no way, because a lot of the money that I did save, and I did save some into those traditional vehicles as well, I can't touch that yet. There's penalties on it. I can't do, what would I be, to your point of the cost of living never goes away, what would I be paying for the cost of living with right now? I'd have to still be working, right?
Yeah, it literally is just a math problem. And I love that you pointed out that, you know, being in a professional career, you have been a good student. You know how to play the game. Like, that game makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. Get good grades, regurgitate, memorize, all those things we were taught. And so sometimes what we're talking about with alternatives and becoming an investor, it actually requires a different skill set. Mm. It actually requires you to become an investor, which means you have to be willing to learn by making mistakes.
Mm-hmm. We don't like mistakes, Joey.
I just said the hard word,
said
right?
the M word. We don't like mistakes. Yeah.
We can't make mistakes.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, if you ever look around and see the most successful people in the world, they will always tell you they made mistakes along the way. That's what actually was the teacher.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, man. I'm not saying that this is easy, but you have to be willing to do uncommon things to have uncommon results. Otherwise, you shouldn't be surprised that you end up in the same path with the same people, with the same excuses and the same, I hate to say it, but disappointments, and feeling like a default that I just can't spend time with my family. Mm-hmm. I can't. There's these words like, I have to go to work. Mm-hmm. I remember this conversation with my fourth daughter. She was probably 2 or 3 at the time, and I was taking her to her little like pre-K type school. Mm-hmm. And it was rare because usually I was at work by the time she had to go to school. And this one time my wife had a doctor's appointment or something. And so I'm like, okay, let me take her. She's all bundled up in the back, got her car seat with the 5-point harness or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she just is talking like this is her time to talk to Dad one-on-one with 4 other sisters. She doesn't get a lot of one-on-one time. Mm-hmm. And she just jibber jabbering. And she says, Dad, you gonna pick me up from school today? And I was like, no, no, of course not. It was like one of those, it almost kind of annoyed me. It's like, that's not gonna happen. Why would you ask me that? Mm-hmm. She says, why are you not gonna pick me up? I said, well, your mom's going to pick you up from school today. I've got to be at work. I have to be at work. Mm-hmm. She says, why you have to go to work? I was like, well, I have to make money. We have to pay for this car, pay for our house, pay for the groceries that we eat. And she just thought for a second, and she said, we already have a car. We already have a house. We already have food. And I remember, I don't know if you can recall these kind of things with your daughters, mm-hmm. but the simplest conversation struck me mm-hmm. so hard.
Yep.
Because I told my daughter, who at that moment in her life, she's now 11, at that moment in her life, all she really wanted was time with Dad.
Yeah.
And I told my daughter, I have to go to work. And I remember being like, this is a line in the sand. Like, I don't ever want to say that to her again. Mm-hmm. And I got really hot and, fast and furious about building passive income at that point. Mm-hmm. And it made all the difference. But if you are okay saying those things to your kids, then none of this matters. Mm-hmm. But if you're like, I need to solve that because I feel that kind of ache, mm-hmm. then you have to do uncommon things. And like you said, you have to be willing to learn as you go.
Yeah, and take risks and feel uncomfortable. All things we don't like to do, especially in my arena, my colleagues. It's hard. And there are times I failed. And there are things I did that I didn't do well the first time or even the second time. That being said, just to speak to what you had said, I absolutely had those moments with my girls, and it pained me as well. I mean, it was so stressful. I can remember, Joey, they'd have, say, like they had a fun run in the fall where they'd have one, right? And I would have to try. It was everything I could do to get there. And I'm like running out of the office. I would have to rearrange some patients. And then as soon as it's done, I'm like running to the car to get back, right? And I would make it. Very few of those things that I miss. At the same time, the stress that it caused, and of course the kids can sense that. Of course, I mean, they know, they read you, they know that. And my kids now have openly talked about that. The past 4 years that I've been in this new capacity, I'm really blessed that I was able to do it at a time when both my girls were still in the house. And my one daughter's in college now, but I had a few years with her as well, where I was able to really be present with them and spend time with them and get to be there and not feel guilty that I was not fulfilling another responsibility. And unless you, again, like you said, I love that you said that. If you don't feel that or value that, I don't think either of us are telling you have to. It's just, that probably means that some people are, they're just okay. And it's their thing. They are really, really driven by work and professional achievement, and that fills their tank, and they still love their family and want to have a close relationship with their family. They just have a different perspective of it. And that's fine. If you're someone who wants to have a little more of that balance while your kids are younger in being involved with your family and working, I don't see how you can do that if you are bound by the responsibilities of a rigorous and intense occupation all the time. And I see it all the time. I see it in colleagues all the time. I think that's why there's so much burnout in my field right now. I mean, Joey, I teach young docs who literally say to me, how long do you think I can do this before I retire? I mean, I've been teaching since I came out 20 years ago. I have never, I mean, it is a newer phenomenon to be asked that question, but it's been asked of me multiple times. It's how soon can I stop? And these are from young docs or even residents. So the burnout is real. There's a lot of pressure. And then they, as you said, they have the debt. So with that, with the people who are feeling that way, are there any words of wisdom you can offer to help them achieve some balance? Like when you're that rat on that wheel and it's going so fast. I mean, we're talking about it now. We both have established this way of life, so it's much easier for us. And I'm sure there are people listening like, yeah, okay, you guys, like you did this, fine, must be nice. But I'm here, which is not where you are, and I can't get off this wheel. I can't stop. What do you say to people like that? And this doesn't mean this is a young doc. This could be somebody who's 65 and has spent their whole career. It doesn't have to be a young doc.
Right. Yeah. Good.
Or a young
point.
person. I mean, I have other people who listen to the show who aren't docs as well.
Yeah. Good point that you're making. There's a couple of thoughts. I'm going to kind of just try to stream these out a little bit. Number one, you can know exactly where you stand by just doing the math right now, right? If you have $1,000 a month coming from a few rental properties or a commercial property you own that your business is working in or something like that. I don't know what your situation is. You have $1,000 a month and you have $10,000 a month in monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. You are 10% of the way to financial freedom. Mm-hmm. Like you don't need a financial advisor, somebody with a bunch of alphabet soup after their name to say that they're smarter than you, to tell you that's how close you are to financial freedom. Mm-hmm. So if you can do that math, then it's just a matter of how do I increase that percentage every year until I get there. Mm-hmm. So that's first of all, level set. The GPS only works if it knows where you're at and then where you're headed, mm-hmm. right? Think about that in your Maps app. Yep. You have to know where you're at and where you're headed to get the directions. So the second thing I would say is anybody who says this is so important to me, I've got to make some changes, you're going to start thinking about money differently. Okay. And what I mean by that is you can't keep doing the same things with money and expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you tell me right now you're 35, you've been practicing for a number of years and you're like, Joey, I feel what you're saying and I want out. I want to be where Mike is in 5 years. Okay. Well, then that means you want to be free by age 40 And what you're doing with money is you're putting money into things like 401ks, IRAs, SEP IRAs, whatever it is, 529 plans. All these things keep you away from your money until you're 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. So immediately you're telling me you can no longer contribute to those things, because when I put money into those things,
right,
they keep me further from financial freedom.
Yep.
They don't produce passive income today, and they don't reduce a monthly expense. So they're immediately going against what I said was important to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's other money traps: paying off debt more aggressively than you have to, paying down a house faster than the mortgage requires of you.
Talk about that a little bit, because that sounds a little more like that Dave Ramsey. And I'm not trying to hate on Dave, and I get there's a place, for the broader message of not going into excessive consumer debt is obviously a good message, right? That being said, I think you and I both agree that Dave Ramsey mentality and kind of that Robert Kiyosaki rich dad mentality are a bit of a contrast in styles.
Yes.
And talk to that a little bit about that aggressive paying down of all of your debts, auto, house, et cetera, before you really start getting into more of the investing side of things.
Yeah. So again, you said it well. We have two very different philosophical ways that we see the world. Dave Ramsey wants you to be bought into the accumulation method, which is, I'm going to retire at some point in my 60s or 70s, and I want to have enough dollars loaded up that I can just walk off into the sunset and start peeling those dollars off. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in that at the core, because number one, you're never called to be out of service. Like retirement really means to be taken out of service. Mm-hmm. And so we can go down that path if you want, but I don't believe it. And I don't believe that that's the way that we should be thinking about our time today. Mm-hmm. And so we've already talked at length about how I do see it. And so think about this. When you pay down extra on a house, I'm just going to use a house for instance, but it also applies to your student loan. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. If I have extra dollars, let's say my mortgage payment is, $3,000 a month, mm-hmm. and I start making $4,000 a month payments, because that extra $1,000 I think is going to free me up from my mortgage in 15 years instead of 30. Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. Just bear with me. Like, this is what people are doing every day, yep. because they think the financial gurus of the world are telling them this is the way to freedom.
Yep.
So think about that. Every month I pay that extra $1,000. Does it produce a passive income today? No. Mm-mm. There's no passive income coming from that. Does it reduce a monthly expense today? The answer is no.
Not typically, no.
Because I paid so if my traditional mortgage payment is $3,000 a month and I pay an extra $1,000, the next month I'm going to get a bill for $3,000.
Right. I think they're hoping it'll reduce it sooner, but it's not in that day. It's
not going to reduce the payment until it's paid off.
Until it's off, right.
Okay, so now think about this. It doesn't reduce a monthly expense. It doesn't produce a passive income. I can no longer put money towards that end and expect to get to financial freedom, because it's only getting me further from. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, Joey, I mean, come on, let's talk about this. Like, eventually you're going to pay it off. Doesn't that reduce your risk? Well, eventually, if you don't have that monthly payment, that's great. But in the meantime, let me ask you a question. Does it increase your risk to put extra money towards a mortgage and something were to happen to you? Right? Like, so mm-hmm. Let's real life. Mm-hmm. I was in the mortgage business for 11 years. I had a guy come to me. He was on a 30-year, and he said, hey, I want to pay this off in 15 years so I can retire. Mm-hmm. Literally a year later, so he agreed to a higher payment. Mm-hmm. to try to pay it off faster. Mm-hmm. He refinances and he loses his job. Guess what time this was? 2009.
That one, yeah.
He's in his 50s. He's in his early 50s. And he's calling me literally every other month. Joey, is there anything we can do about this mortgage? I can't pay the payment. I've been laid off. I'm applying to jobs every day. I'm getting nowhere. I mean, think about where we were in 2009.
Yeah.
Nobody was hiring.
Yep.
And this guy's in his 50s And he's sitting there like about to lose his house, which is 50% paid off. And he's agreed to a higher monthly payment. At that moment, okay, think about that. If he's been paying extra, he should be, if he was talking about freedom, he should have been able to call the bank up and say, hey, by the way, I've paid you guys some extra over the last couple years.
Can you apply that?
Could you just like help me out here? Could you just like maybe send some of that back to me because I'm having some trouble with my other bills? What do you think the bank said?
Of course not.
They're like, you don't qualify.
Yeah.
You don't have an income.
Yeah. You can't refinance.
You can't get your money back.
Yeah. And banks certainly weren't, the whole industry was tightening up as well. So they weren't looking to write loans. I mean, that was when the whole industry changed because of the issues before with the mortgage industry.
I was sick for this guy.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that like you put yourself at a higher risk when you're paying extra towards the principal on a mortgage until it's fully paid off. And you're talking sometimes 10 plus years, 15 years. And what if you lost in that meantime?
Yeah.
All the ability to create passive income that could have made that mortgage payment for you. Right. So again, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna be the most popular guy in the world, but I am because I'm gonna challenge what people think. But it's all in the light of, man, if we want something uncommon, we have to do something uncommon. We have to start thinking about monthly expenses where they are and start producing passive income on the other side to cover it.
Yeah. And there are probably people out there who are thinking, yeah, but Joey, my house is my biggest asset. And I mean, both of us are shaking our heads. As we keep citing it, but as Kiyosaki said via Rich Dad, assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money out. I don't remember the last primary residence I've owned, and I've owned a few, that paid me anything. But I remember all of them costing me a lot of money to pay for every little thing about it, the repairs, the maintenance. And if people are like, yeah, but my parents bought their house for $50,000 and sold it for $400,000. Okay. If you look at the time value of that money and the work they put into it and the taxes they paid and the interest payments on their mortgage, I guarantee you that very few people come out ahead in that game. So your house is your place to live. Your house is your place. And if you want a nice one, I want a nice house. Fine. But let's not kid each other or kid ourselves at that point, right? Not kid ourselves and say, well, I'm paying down my mortgage more aggressively because it's my biggest asset. Where are you going to live? Okay. You have no debt in your house. You own your house outright. Great. Okay. What are you going to do? Sell it to invest in apartment buildings? I mean, like seriously, go live in an apartment? I mean, most chances are you're not going to be able to sell that house and move into a comparable living structure, or a comparable structure to reside that is going to cost you less money than what you're paying in that house. So, but people don't think that. We just hear it and hear it and hear it. So sorry to rev you up on that, but what are your thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I actually think about this all the time. My wife and I talk about like, we could live in a house that's 4 or 5 times as nice as the house that we're in. But to your point, it's the philosophical idea that this is a liability.
Yeah.
Because we live here full time, it doesn't put money in our pockets. We want to reduce that to the lowest we possibly can, which means you have to say no to the lifestyle creep.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
I mean, hey, you're the doctor. You should live in the highest and nicest and all. That is bull. That is how people.
Is that another one of those traps that you're talking about before? The house trap, the country club trap, right? All of those traps.
The lifestyle creep, man. Yeah. If you have no surplus because your lifestyle has crept up to where it equals your income, you're no closer than the person who is the janitor in the cash flow game. You're like, oh, they don't make any money. Whatever. They're probably better off than you because they don't have that lifestyle creep. So, yeah, it's you have to put a governor on that stuff, man, and it's not easy. I'm not saying.
Do you have any advice for people how to do that? Like, or if there's spouses where one's a spender, one's a saver, any pearls on that for people?
I would say that it will never work until you and your spouse are completely aligned on the end goal. Right? Mm-hmm. If you and your spouse are sitting at the house and you can say, man, this is something that I feel so passionate about. Like, I want to be present for our family. And the only way that's going to happen is if we can get our cash flow right and if we can become investors. Like, those are the two missing components. And in order for that to happen, we have to have investable money. We have to have dollars that can go towards investments.
Yeah.
And right now, if we keep things the way that they are, that's never going to happen.
Yep.
And then it's just a matter of, do you want this with me or not?
Yep.
Right? Are we aligned? And we actually have a course in our community. If you ever join our community, it's free. It's called the Passport Challenge. And in that Passport Challenge, it actually brings spouses together a lot on this, because they can take it together, and it actually challenges you to say, when you're financially free, who will you be, what will you do, and what will you have? So think be, do, have. You've probably heard that before. And if you and your spouse can get together and really start to verbalize, what are those things? If we could dream together for a minute and say, these are things I would love our life to be about, and you guys get passionate about that, you can handle any lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
Because then it's not about, oh, well, you just want to spend money and I don't. It's, we want this end outcome.
Yeah.
And this is the only way we're going to get there. So I don't know. That's a practical thing that we've used in terms of helping our clients to get on the same page. Because sometimes there's one person that's all about the finances and one person doesn't want anything to do with the finances. And this is actually more of a philosophical thing that then brings them on the same page.
Yeah, if I can, I'll get afterwards a link for that to put in the show notes for people to go to that. And I can put a link as well, the doc website at theorthocoach.com. There's a balance sheet that I built that is free, totally customizable, and people can go in and it will literally help you calculate your income, expenses, assets, liabilities. You download it, so I don't see it. You literally go in, click, and you download it to your computer. And I created that because I found with my wife that we had very different ideas from our own upbringing about money and just how we approached money. And when we started knowing our numbers, it was really hard. And from what you're saying about having a vision and setting goals, and I'll come back to that more in a second to seek some more advice from you on that and how we can help people with that. First, I found it was really important to know our financial report card, as Kiyosaki calls it. Where are we, right? Because it might feel like you have a lot more money than you do. If you're living in a big house and driving nice cars and have nice things or doodads, right, so to speak, then you might feel like we're doing really, really well. But as you said, in the bigger picture, your cash flow, you could be cash flow poor. You could be living paycheck to paycheck or month to month, right? Yep. It's just more zeros, literally. Like someone who makes 10,000 and someone who makes $1 million, if they're both spending all of it, they are both cash flow poor. It really doesn't matter what you are bringing in as that top number. So for those people, I found it was really easy to be in denial about your financial report card. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You don't want to face it.
Yeah.
And the other part is I say, like, we have to start keeping score differently. I think it's so common to look at others and see, oh, well, they live in this house or they have this type of car.
Comparison.
Or their kids go to
comparison
this
can
school,
be evil.
Or like, right, those are how the natural way, the Jones, if you call it the Jones way of scoring, like financially,
Yep.
That's how we do it. But it's not really the whole picture. In fact, it's just it's a outward appearance, but what's the actual health? I mean, I don't pretend to know what you guys do in terms of the dental world, but I would think there's a lot of times where people's teeth look well, but on the inside they're rotted, right? And it doesn't matter how they look. It's going to fall apart. Yep. The same thing is true.
We face it in orthodontics all the time where the front teeth might look straight, but they have a horrible malocclusion and all sorts of issues. And a lot of times the parents will be like, but their smile is nice. And like, yeah, but structurally things are falling apart. They're not going to have those teeth for very long.
Yeah. And so I think you have to start keeping score differently. You have to start saying it's not about what things look like on the outside. It's more about how much freedom do we actually have with our time. And the only way to do that is for your money to be at work while you're not.
Yep.
And you can't get your head around that, and you don't want to like change the way you act in light of that, none of this matters. But if you've been listening to this long, you definitely want to see a difference, and you definitely want to have that freedom. And I'm just saying, it just you have to make, bigger decisions to support it.
Yeah. And I find you have to fill out your financial report card, your balance sheet together if you have a significant other that you share money with or assets with, because you have to know where you stand. And I tell this story often. My wife and I, when we did this the first time, I was a resident at UConn. We live in this little apartment in this rough area in New Britain. It was not pretty. Neither of us had any assets to our name. Thankfully, we'd stayed out of bad debt, but we had significant student loan debt. And we did it, right? We took the Rich Dad coaching course. We were all in on it, and we we joke like we had to have a drink while we were doing it because it was awful. And some of my co-residents were leaving to go out for that night. It was a weekend night, and they saw the light in our place, and they call up. They're like, come on out. And we're like, no, we're working on something. So again, we have a choice to do. We could have gone out and spent some money going out, money we really didn't have, or we could have spent our time trying to learn more about our own financial status. And by doing that, as humbling as it can be, it then becomes a bit of a game. And most of us, especially a lot of people listening to this show, are competitive on some level. I know I am. And my wife is as well. And it became this sort of, well, how well can we do now, right? How much can we build that? We know we're starting with zero assets and a pretty decent number in the liability column and pretty low in the income. And we were good. And my wife was good about creating a budget back then. So our expenses weren't really exceeding our income, but there just wasn't a lot of either, right? And I credit that with the reason why we were able to do what we did from starting where we started, because we then had, as you said before, if you don't put in your GPS where you're going to go, if you don't know where you're starting and where you're ending, how do you know how to get there? And there's tons of different routes and tons of different ways to do it. So that'd be one piece of advice I would give people. Sit down, you can get a balance sheet online, you can get it from my website, start to know your financial status, where you're at, your report card. And then I want to hear your thoughts on the goal setting and the vision planning. So once they know this, right, they sit down, they start to get a feel for their financial status. What's next as far as planning? What happens from there?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, you can do this on your own, but I think you're better served to have an objective third party. And we did, in fairness, I should thank you. We started a relationship not long after that, probably within a year of that, who is still our financial advisor, who has guided us through many of these decisions. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. We have we have about a dozen coaches who work with people. And one of the first things they do is a cash flow awareness, where they go through and they say, okay, where does your money come in? Where does it go next? How much do you put into these quote unquote money traps? They help you kind of visualize what is going on in your personal economy. And you'll be surprised. We actually have a tool we call the personal P&L. Because guess what? As you run your business, what do?
Yep.
You run a P&L.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
You live and die by it.
Yep.
But when we get to our personal, we don't operate that way.
Right.
And so we're like, wait a minute, let's actually use what's working over here, apply it here.
I like that.
We have a tool, you go through it, you build your personal P&L. Now you can actually flow the money into the proper places. And our coaches help you do that because they're able to say, this is what you said you want, but this is what you're doing with money. Those things don't add up.
Yeah.
Well, why would you keep doing that versus this? And so I think there's a lot of power in having somebody from the outside.
Yeah, it's true.
Help you to say, this is what you said, this is what you're doing. Let's bring these things together.
Do you have them write down the goals and the vision? Is that part of the process?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's you get in a tangible document that you can keep updating.
Okay, and my next question is, okay, so you revisit, you have them revisit it. And about how often should people be revisiting those goals?
Well, if you have any major life changes, you should update it. But I would say every year at least you should be reviewing it, because by then you can say, okay, did we get the first hurdle, the first milestone? Now, if you set the first milestone, it's only going to be 3 months from now, update it then.
Yep.
Depends on what the actual milestone is you're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
But I think, you just said something that I didn't know about your story, but it makes sense why you are where you are. You went through Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What did you say? It was like their coaching.
They had a coaching platform. Yeah, and trust me, we did not have the money to do it. I think it was $2,000, and we did not have an extra $2,000, but we budgeted for it. We didn't go into debt for it, and it was hard, but we went through this rigorous, it was like, I was a resident at the time. I didn't have a lot of, again, extra time. Yeah. I think it was like 3 months, and we had a weekly meeting. If I'm dating myself, there were VCR tapes that they sent us to play, and audio cassettes, and we had homework, and it was really intense, and we had a weekly phone conference with our coach.
So you literally outlined, our second step in our process is a 12-week, we call it the passive income lab. And the guarantee is by the end of 12 weeks, you have your first $500 in passive income.
Love it.
Per month.
Yep.
And so, but you have to do it. You have to educate yourself. Yeah. You spent years and years and years learning your craft, right? To become a professional dentist, lawyer, doctor, whatever you are. And yet, how much have you spent learning to invest? How much have you spent time, energy, and getting accountability, with a coach? You just mentioned a coach will help you say, hey, this week, what are you going to get done this week? Oh, you didn't do the homework? Okay, when can I write down that you're going to tell me what you did to finish that? We have an actually group session every week, and then you have an individual coach on the back end.
I like that.
Okay, so what do you get from that? You get all the group peer pressure. Hey, everybody's doing this, but I dropped the ball. Everybody's looking like, hey, man.
Right. Instead of the Joneses peer pressure, keeping up and looking good and going nowhere, you're getting productive peer pressure to be more fiscally responsible.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's 12 weeks. It's not like a forever thing. But man, the results are staggering because people are investing in themselves. Yeah. They're investing in educating themselves. And so I think that those two things are critical. If you can get your cash flows to support your goal and you can educate yourself on becoming an investor, here's the real words from people that as they come out, I feel so much more confident that I'm going to be able to hit my goals. Well, why? Why did they say that? Because now they have the frameworks to be able to make a decision on what to invest in.
Yep.
They have the cash to do it. They have both pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And now all you got to do is keep stacking that. As your cash is available, you get to do the next one. You know the recipe. You're making the recipe. You know you're going to get the cookies on the outcome, right? Yep. It's going to come all together. So those things, I think, again, we started kind of this conversation thinking, well, how do you help the person that's just starting out? How do you help the person that's been doing this for a long time? It's the same process. You're just at different places. Yeah. One of you may have more cash than the other one to start with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're at a disadvantage. If you learn these things, it's the same recipe. You just have to work it in the time that you have.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's so great what you've created. I didn't even know the extent of it. I know we've spoken about it a little bit, but it really is cool, the depth of the coaching that you're going into and the guidance. And I know how much it helped us and helped chart our course for what we were able to achieve. And I said before, I'd be open about it. We literally just started thinking differently about, number one, I should say, well, let me back up. We started thinking about money differently. That was the first hurdle we had to overcome. We had to think about money differently. And one thing I will caution people, and I have told friends and family members this, be ready, because your social group, you will see a dynamic change with the people in your circle, friends and family. And I'm sure you've seen it way more times than I have. People will think you've changed. People will think you're different if you don't want to go out to this event or you don't want to spend for this, right? How do people deal with some of that? Because that social pressure, which we've both talked about, right, can be good and can be bad. I mean, having that social pressure from an accountability standpoint can be good. That being said, if people are rolling in these crowds where they're running with a pretty affluent, or at least people who spend a lot of money group, now all of a sudden you tell them you're not going to dinner on the weekend. You tell them you're not going to go on that trip together to this whatever place. You're going to do something stay a little closer to home. How do you help people navigate that side of it?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to show up at your house and, tell you what you can and can't do. What I will say is that we have crabs in a barrel syndrome.
Yes.
Right? The people that you're around that aren't on the same path will try to pull you back.
Yes.
What do you think, Mike? What are you talking about? You're investing in this real estate deal? I don't know, man. Could you not lose your money doing that? Mm-hmm. Isn't that going to be I've heard there's Ponzi schemes out there,
mm-hmm.
blah, blah. They're going to get they're just pulling you down. Mm-hmm. The crab's trying to get out of the barrel and then they just get pulled down by the other ones. Mm-hmm. Your circle can stay the same if you become the influence. Mm-hmm. If you become influenced, you need a new circle. Mm-hmm. And all I'm saying is you have to be the deciding factor on that. The reason why we built an app on this platform called Mighty Networks, you can actually go to any app store and go to Wealth Without Wall Street. You can find our app. It's free to join. We built it. There's over 10,000 people in this app because guess what? You need a circle that is actually on the same path. Mm-hmm. And we knew that support was going to be necessary. And it's been a godsend for so many people because they're like, wait a minute, I'm here. I don't feel like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Everywhere else I go, I'm the kind of weird person who's listening to podcasts. I'm the weird person who is attending webinars to learn about investing. I'm going through this 12-week course. Mm-hmm. I'm getting my cash flows looked at. Nobody does that, mm-hmm. But this group, everybody does it. Mm-hmm. And that is really, really, helping me to stay focused to get the outcome that I want.
Yeah. And sometimes you're going to have people that you may have, that relationship might change a little bit if they are a bad influence. And I've used the example with people before. It's like an alcoholic who goes through an AA program, a 12-step program. And the one of the things they teach you is you cannot go back to the bar and hang out with the same people who were influencing you to drink and to make those bad decisions. And if it is yet, like you said, there might be people that you can actually, that doesn't mean you can't hang out with any of those people that go to that bar. It just means you can't be in that environment. You might be able to say, right, hey guys, come over to my place. We're not going to be drinking and we're going to do whatever it might be. Right. And some people may not go or may say, oh yeah, now he's all above us because he's, doesn't drink anymore. He's better than us. Right. You're going to see that at the same time. That can be challenging for people initially. I know once you start to see the fruits of your labor and you start to see how much better everything is, it gets easier and easier and easier. And once we started to develop those passive income streams, and some of them, I just reached out to people. Joey, I cold called a guy who I saw in one of our local business papers. He was a local guy. He started this big company who bought and renovated and then bought land and built storage units. And it was a story on him. And his contact info was in there. And they said they were starting their second fund. And I was like, I'm going to reach out to this guy. I literally emailed him, said, I'm a local guy, and through a weird connection, I was the orthodontist on the cleft craniofacial team at the local hospital. Turned out he was a donor to that team. I had no idea. He had no idea when we first spoke. But we got talking, and next thing you know, I could not afford to put in there were CEOs of some of the biggest banks in the U.S. in this fund, right? They were some big high rollers and heavy hitters. I was doing quite well, but I was not at that level. So he's telling me the minimums, and I'm like, Bob, honestly, I appreciate that, but that's not something I can do. You would pledge the money over a certain period of time. There were, you'd have capital calls over a 3-year period, but you had to be, when you didn't know how much that call was going to be for, right? It could be for, a little bit or a lot. And so you had to make sure you had enough liquid that when you got that call, you had it. So anyway, I obviously didn't want to be irresponsible with my commitments. So he said to me, you come back to me tomorrow with a number you can do, and I'll consider it. You're a local guy. You are doing a lot for the community. I love that you're donating your time to this cleft craniofacial team. I'd be happy to try to help you out if I could. So my wife and I talked that night. We talked to our coach advisor, right? And we picked a number, and I went back to him the next day, and he said, I'll have my secretary send you the paperwork to get started. And he let us in. And now we've reinvested in his second fund. We've invested in a third fund. The third fund is the single largest privately owned storage unit fund in the US today. All because I just took that chance and said, I wanted to see if there's an opportunity. And he was receptive. And I've actually now got to know him a little bit personally on things. And so anyway, I just encourage people to just think outside the box, right? I literally cold called this guy, like literally, and I'm not super good at that. That's not really my MO. And I'm not always the most comfortable doing that. I just figured, what can it hurt? Maybe I'll just learn something from him, or at least get to know somebody who maybe he knows of another deal. Maybe I can't get on this one. But, and again, I tell that story because those things have turned out to provide so much passive income for my family. And it started just because, but the other part of that is, if we hadn't been saving responsibly and had a margin, which goes back to what you were saying before, and we hadn't had a goal and didn't know our financial report card, I never could have had that conversation with him. I never would have made that call, or that email, I guess, to be fair. Right? I just wouldn't have, because I wouldn't have had the margin to do it. So it is a plan, and it does require goal setting. Anything you would add to that?
Well, I'll say a couple things. Number one, opportunities find cash. Mm-hmm. Like that is a known fact. If you start talking about wanting to invest, start talking about looking for deals, and you have cash, they will find you. Mm-hmm. It's just a kind of,
I agree,
known thing.
I agree.
Right? It's a rule. The second thing, when some people heard you saying that story, they were like scared to death about having a conversation with somebody who's an investor and saying, I wouldn't even know what to ask them. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that you need to get a coach to help you with. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a Rich Dad, Poor Dad coach, or our program, or something else, you need to, even ChatGPT right now, we actually, when people go through our group, the 12-week course, they build a custom GPT. Mm-hmm. We help them with all the inputs. They build a buy box. Mm-hmm. And then what happens, they can take the documents from that investment. Mm-hmm. So let's say that storage deal. Yep. They take the document and dump it into their custom GPT, and it says, hey, this meets the requirements for this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. These things are missing that you said were important to you. I would not proceed.
Awesome. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because
red, yellow, green,
that is super cool. Number one, that you're doing that. I absolutely love it. And I left that part of the story out. Poor Justin, I keep slighting him here. But when I reached out to Justin about that, he said, he then reviewed the plan docs for us. And that's where it's so important to have those coaches, those advisors that you trust. Because even though we did a lot of our investing through Justin, he's a fiduciary and he's super honest. He's been a guest on my show as well. And he looked at the opportunity and he understands that language. This was well before ChatGPT or any AI. And he was able to help us make that decision. So to have that third party there, because I could look through those plan docs and be like, sounds good to me. And as Justin would always say, I don't think I've seen the plan docs of a proposal that say it's going to be a losing deal, right? They almost all are going to come back with some window dressing is going to look good, but having someone who can dive into the logistics of that plan to say, do the numbers that they are projecting make sense is so important, because you can get into a bad situation. You can get scammed. And so you have to know and have resources there. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to just add that little anecdote in.
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to add is that we also walk people through, what questions do you need to ask the operator? Not somebody who told you about the deal, but the actual person who's implementing the business plan. So in this case, you were probably talking to the guy who's actually buying and managing those self-storage facilities, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
Or building them.
Yep.
But if somebody had just told you about it, some people would stop there. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, and this is a good guy. He told me this is a deal he's investing in. I'm just going to take his word for it and invest. Wrong answer. Mm-hmm. You need to go to the person who's actually doing the work, who's actually going to be making this a passive investment for you. And you need to invest the time to get to know them, to understand their track record, to ask them the hard questions about the deal that, as you say, the window dressing looks good, but what's behind the scenes? And this is a skill. Like you can just go to ChatGPT and have them, pull up a bunch of questions and you can ask them. But if you understand how to approach an operator and what are the possible red flags in a deal, you know how much more confident you are putting money into that deal.
It's huge.
It's like huge. You don't have the buyer's remorse that you would have otherwise. So again, I don't care where you get the education, where you get the coaching, but you got to do it. If you're going to be investing and stewarding money, you have to become an investor. You have to train yourself to think this way and get the tools.
Yeah, and I think some people hear this too and say, yeah, guys, but I love what I do, right? And again, I have a lot of people listen to the show who aren't even in the professions. I love what I do. I love my job. Fine. But you never know what life is going to bring down your path. I loved my job, right? I still do love orthodontics. I didn't foresee the challenges that were going to present themselves to me in terms of not being able to find an associate that I could work. I thought I'd bring a doc in and I would have this great transition of my practice over a period of years. But because I practiced a bit differently than a lot of people and I did a lot more early treatment and focused more on the airway side of things, I didn't realize there were going to be challenges bringing that doc in. So I ended up finding I had built this mega practice that was getting to be a lot to manage and run alone, or with my wife on the front end of it. And so you never know. And okay, so then you do continue to do it. But how much is it better to do it, like you said, when those patients in that schedule, as you said in the beginning, are there because you want them there and you want to be there, not because you need them to pay your bills.
Yeah, and have to. Want to versus have to is a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, I'm not saying that everyone needs to retire by 40. You might want to practice at whatever, or work at whatever you're doing till 70. Great. That being said, I don't think many people would say they want to go at there are outliers, I understand that, but the vast majority would say, I don't want to go out an all-out pace for 40 years, working from dawn till dusk and taking work home with me and working on the weekends and being at a high level of stress my entire life and then hope I can enjoy it at 70 and beyond, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a scam. At the end of the day, if you're holding out to be relieved of work, when you do, your body will. I mean, most people will have lost something to do. They start to decline very quickly. Their health is not where it was 20, 30 years before. There's so many things. There's no promise of tomorrow. I think take things back to biblical wisdom because it's way better than the world's wisdom. And I just hold on to those truths. But man, we're not promised tomorrow. How do I make an impact today?
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to buy this retirement lie, this scam. I'm going to dig in today. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to equip myself to make sure that I make the most of it. That's really what this is about.
I'm going to let you have the last word with that. That was a perfect way to surmise and summarize everything that we just spent the last hour and 15 minutes here talking about. I really appreciate your time and your expertise and your honesty. It's funny because when I have conversations like this with people who I share that common thought process with, it does flow easily. And I'm really glad about the fact that you said at one point, there are people who are scared hearing this or intimidated by what we're talking about. And I hope they stuck with it to hear this. And if you are one of those people who were a little uncomfortable through this, right? Reach out to myself, reach out to Joey. I'm going to, in a second, want you to say where they can find you, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. Try to assemble a team, have those tough conversations, go download the balance sheet or find a balance sheet somewhere and fill it out. Just start to do it a little bit at a time. I love that you said they start, and after 12 weeks, $500, right? Just try to take those little baby steps. And then you realize it's like the concept of Monopoly. You don't buy all hotels on all these properties, right? I mean, you have to first pass go a couple times. You got to buy a property here or there. You get a little bit of cash flow. Then you buy a house, right? That's the concept that you can employ when you do this. And it really, really is wonderful. So I thank you for explaining it and for what you're doing and for the people that that you're helping. So how can people find you and reach out to you if they want to learn more?
Well, we actually, if it's okay, we created a site that people could go to for your podcast. If you go to wealth.wallstreet.com /doc.
Oh, cool.
So wealth.wallstreet.com /doc. We've got, at the very beginning, it's just a financial freedom analyzer. So you take the test. It tells you how close you are to financial freedom. There's a couple of free webinar and resources that are on there, and all of our contact info is on there as well. So yeah, just
Perfect.
Love for you to connect with me. Let me know that you heard me on the Doc podcast. And man, I'm always very grateful for people to do that.
Joey Muré, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. And I'll look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you. We found out through this too, we have some people that tend to share our interests, and that's how this network grows, really. That's one of the most fun things about doing this for me, is the people I get to meet and then the people they introduce me to, and it just creates this network of like-minded people. And I think in today's world where we feel like everyone's thinking differently from us, or that we might be on opposite sides of whatever issue, there are a lot of people who share values and share concepts. So if you're out there, you're hearing this, share this with other people, get this message out there, because there is a lot to be said for when you can reach that point of financial freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Join your tribe, right? That's what I see, is like you're adding people to your tribe all the time. So now you're in mine and I'm in yours.
Love it. Absolutely. Awesome. Great talking with you, bud. Appreciate you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Doc Podcast. Be sure to visit theorthocoach.com to get access to ADA CERT recognized CE courses, or to schedule a private one-on-one coaching session with me. Also, if you know of someone who would make a great guest for this show, or if you'd like to be a guest yourself, please email me at drmike@theorthocoach.com. And be sure to join the Doc community on Facebook for more great content. Thanks so much for listening, and always remember, you have been blessed with the ability to do amazing things.